Hi everybody, it's Lily, and welcome to my series of Unfortunate Events book and Netflix review. If you haven't read the series or you haven't watched the TV show and you don't want any spoilers, then I would suggest that you look away. I'm going to be mostly talking about the Netflix series that came out at the end of last year. I am going to be totally honest, I have not reread the books in a very long time, which is why I'm mostly going to be talking about the series and my impressions of it. So I didn't reread any of the books this time through. I actually was trying to reread them a while ago before the TV series was announced, but when I picked up the first book, it didn't quite meet up to what I remembered from when I was a kid, and I didn't want to ruin the perception that I had of it. Obviously, they're written for younger readers. I get that. Like, I'm a lot older than I was back then when I was reading them. So I didn't want to ruin my perception of them by rereading them and not liking them as much. However, that being said, because I don't remember the next ones very well, kind of starting at The Miserable Mill and then onward, I don't remember them that well. So I might end up rereading them, the next, bunch of them before the next season comes out. I know, or I have read somewhere that Netflix is going to try to get out the seasons fairly quickly because of the fact that they are working with child actors. So, they might be on my TBR here sometime soon. They're pretty short books, so I don't think it'd take me very long to read them. It just depends on, if I decide it's necessary or not. It might be fun to be able to compare them a little bit more closely. So obviously every TV show, every movie is going to take some creative license when they are adapting a book series or a single book. It's just to be expected, and I mean, obviously it can be disappointing when things are changed, but I don't really see the point in nitpicking at this point, especially because I haven't reread these in a long time. I do know that, like I've mentioned before, things have been changed. But I think that the core of the story is still the same. I absolutely adored these books growing up. And back in the day, when the movie was going to come out, I was really excited for it. And it did not stand up to my high expectations. I think that's probably where my skepticism about book-to-movie, book-to-TV adaptations initiated. I usually don't like them very much. But since this is something I hold so close to my heart, I decided to give it a shot. And it was Netflix who was putting it on, and I know that they put a lot of work and effort into the things that they do. So I guess let's just jump right in and get started. So season 1 of the Netflix series covers books 1 through 4 of the series. I was really excited to hear about that because it's farther than we've ever gotten to see the books adapted. The movie only went from books 1 through 3, so I was really excited to get to The Miserable Mill, since it's something we haven't ever seen before. However, we had to get through books 1 through 3 in order to get there. So when the trailers and the posters first came out, I was really excited. They looked dark, they looked like it could be a bit grungy, and it's something I really wanted. I wanted this to be dark. I just wanted to go there. I thought, this is Netflix. They can do things that other TV channels and stations can't do. So I was really, really looking forward to this being just dark. Because I remember the books being kind of this dark, gritty. I mean, of course they're for children, but as a kid, I remember these being kind of dark. Although the situations that these kids are kind of put in can come across as sort of humorous, deep down it's not supposed to be a funny story. I mean, the way it's written, it comes across that way. There's humor injected into it. But if you really think about it, these are kids who have been orphaned because of a terrible fire, and they're sent from person to person trying to get a stable life together, and they eventually don't even have someone to take care of them. I mean, it's not something light and funny, at least on the surface level. It's just how it's written that makes it a bit humorous. So I was really looking forward to Netflix just going all the way, making this dark and gritty and, just kind of what I had always imagined it to be, especially after that movie that was just a disaster. Let's just not even talk about it. I was very disappointed with it. I thought it tried too hard to be funny, and it just didn't work out for me. So that's what I was excited about. And I have to say, when I started the first book in the series, not reading them, but actually watching the first 2 episodes in this season, I was a bit let down. I immediately saw that this was not going to be the dark, serious TV show that I had been hoping it was going to be. And don't get me wrong, I can understand why that is. I know that these books were written and are aimed at kids. They're not really for young adults and adults, although, you know, of course those people can enjoy them. They're written for kids. So I understand that you can't take the TV show too far out of that realm. Although I do kind of think that it's a bit silly not to go a bit further with it, because I do feel like the people who are probably the most excited for the show were the now adults or young adults. I don't really consider myself an adult even though I'm 23. The young adults who are now looking back at this and thinking about how fondly they remember these books and remembering reading them as kids. I sort of feel like those are the people who are probably most excited for the show to come out. Although I do understand that, you know, I'm sure kids are watching it. And kids who are still picking up the series would be interested in seeing it. So I do understand that they couldn't go that far in making it kind of that dark drama that I wanted it to be. But I was still a bit disappointed that instead of sort of dark at all, we ended up with sort of a quirky Wes Anderson style going on. So I was immediately kind of disappointed and a bit skeptical about how the rest of this was going to go down. Wasn't pleased to begin with, but I did decide, you know, it's the first couple episodes, stick it out. You can't judge something based on, you know, the first couple pages, the first couple episodes. So I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, and I decided to continue on. I guess I should mention that in the TV series, each book gets 2 episodes, which I was actually kind of pleased about. I thought, especially since the first books are rather short, that might not be necessary. I thought, you know, are they really going to have enough content to put into, you know, 2 45, 50-minute episodes per book? But I actually do think that it worked quite well, and I think it worked to their advantage. I do think that, for the most part, nothing major that I can remember was left out. And I do think it's something that people complain about all the time when you get a book to movie adaptation. You know, there's tons of things got left out, you know, whatever. And sometimes splitting works, sometimes it doesn't. I think it worked for Harry Potter. I don't think it worked for The Hunger Games. Or at least they split the wrong book for The Hunger Games. But since they're doing it to all of the books in this series, I think that they can give each book the proper amount of attention that they deserve. So I was a little bit leery about it, but I think that it's working to their advantage. They can put in as much as they need to get the story across in a fairly authentic manner. So like I said earlier, we have seen the first 3 books come to life on a screen before. And so for me, I feel bad about saying this, but for me, getting through at least the first 2 episodes, which encompass the first book, it felt like a little bit of a slog, just because we've seen it before. I mean, it wasn't drastically different. We still get that hello, 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 I am your beloved Count Olaf line, which I guess is sort of become an iconic line. So I guess they couldn't really take it out. I mean, they could have, but people might have missed it and complained about that. But I was just kind of like, that one was just okay. I think for me, that was probably the weakest book that the series has done, or the TV show has done. I think it did get progressively better after that. I remember being pleasantly surprised by the reptile room. It started to get a little bit better then. And then the wide window, I feel like the reptile room and the wide window, it didn't get as much coverage in the movie. Granted, I only saw it like the one time a long time ago, but I remember, at least in my mind, that the first book stuck out a lot more to me in the movie. So the TV show did start to pick up for me after the first 2 episodes. So Reptile Room was pretty good. You know, still not, we've seen it before. It's not like it was anything groundbreaking or entirely different, something we haven't ever seen before. And then we got to The Wide Window, and I think that one was done fairly well. You know, I think Aunt Josephine was portrayed pretty accurately, and I enjoyed her character, you know, kind of that like crazy grammar Nazi, but she's also like completely phobic about everything. And that could have easily come off as like way over the top, but I think that they kept it to a reasonable level, enough to keep it comical, but not enough to make it entirely frustrating and irritating and annoying. And I actually do think that Captain Sham was played really well. We could tell it was Count Olaf, obviously, and we're told right off the bat that that's who it is. I mean, like, who else would it be? But I did think that there was a distinct difference in how Neil Patrick Harris plays Count Olaf as to how Captain Sham was played, at least in his interactions to Josephine. Obviously, he breaks character to be Count Olaf instead of Captain Sham when it's just him and the kids. But I do think that there was definitely a difference in character, which I thought was, you know, pretty good acting. And then when we get to Lucky Smells, Lumber Mill, and The Miserable Mill, that, like I said before, that was my favorite episode. I really just think that the acting got a lot better. And I think also I might have liked it a bit better because we break that pattern that we've sort of gotten into in the first 3 books of find a new guardian, Count Olaf somehow gets in the way, Count Olaf is thwarted, go to your new guardian, rinse, repeat. So I think it's good that we do get away from that. Obviously that happened in the books, it's not just something that's exclusive to the TV series, but it might be the reason why I did like The Miserable Mill better than the first 3. I feel like there was sort of something to either live up to or not in the first 3 that the 4th wasn't constrained by, and perhaps that's why I thought it was probably the best of the 4 books that they actually went through in this season. So as far as the acting goes, I thought in the first few episodes it was quite forced, especially the kids, Violet and Klaus especially. You know, it did feel a lot like they were sort of reciting lines. It didn't feel genuine, I guess. I know that they were they were trying to stay close to the style of the books in the way that they presented the dialogue and how everything kind of goes down. I do understand that, but it did feel forced all the same. I do think that especially Violet got better when we got to The Miserable Mill. And along with that, I am particularly glad that they are keeping Sunny's contributions to a minimum. I know that she was an important part of the series, and I wouldn't say, you know, take her out or whatever, nothing like that, but I do think that how her character is written comes off very differently in written form as opposed to visually on a screen. I think for whatever reason, the way she can be characterized in a book is much different than they can characterize her on a screen. She doesn't seem so babyish in the books. I mean, we know that she is a baby, but for whatever reason, she gets more of a character than just babbling, teething baby in the books, as I remember. However, when you get to something like TV, we only really get characterization as far as what we can see of her, and perhaps a little bit of what the other characters can tell us about her. So I remember this also being a problem in the movie that came out, but she just comes out as a bit of a gimmick. She didn't come across that way in the books, but in the movies and the TV show, it can be sort of gimmicky to have this baby who can only speak in subtitles because she's babbling and only the kids can understand her, you know, and then she chews through whatever. So I'm very glad that in the TV show, they do seem to be keeping her contributions to a minimum. We get enough of her that we don't forget about her, but it's not put in there as such a gimmick. I also actually kind of liked how in the TV show they're keeping the way things are presented and even the narration and dialogue very close to what I remember the books being like. There's a very specific way that the books are written, and it did seem to me that the people who worked on this TV show tried to keep the spirit of that very close to what the books were. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like the narration by, Lemony Snicket that we get in the TV show, but I actually sort of do. We get a lot of that kind of fun quirkiness that we get in the books through that. And I kind of enjoyed it. I do think that part of the charm of these books is the way that they're written, and I'm glad that they didn't just completely forsake that. However, that being said, in the books, something that comes up occasionally is that someone will say a word and assume that the Baudelaire children don't know the word, and then they'll obviously give a definition of what that word means, and then the kids will be like, we know what X word means. And I felt like in the first 2 or 3 books in the TV series, when that happened, it happened way too often. Like, we obviously know that these kids are not dumb, so we only really needed that to happen a couple of times to get that across, but I feel like it happened a couple too many times, at least for my liking. It did seem to taper off, which was good. I don't think they had to completely get rid of it, but I mean, a little bit goes a long way with this type of thing. So I'm glad that it did taper off and that it's not become this huge, I don't know, sort of like a joke. I don't think it's very funny, so I'm glad that they are sort of pulling back a bit on that and not keep jamming it down our throats. Another thing that I was uncertain about, but actually ended up kind of liking, at least as far as how I've interpreted it. So from the very beginning, we get these 2 adults who are referred to, or we assume are the Baudelaire parents. We know that they are parents of someone, and I think the way it's set up, it leads us to believe that they're the parents of the Baudelaire kids. We see them several times throughout the season. I think at least once an episode. I could be wrong. It could be a little bit less than that, a little bit more. But we do see them quite a few times throughout the season. And I was thinking, we didn't know that the parents were alive in the books. And I think, as I said, I haven't reread these in a long time, and I think we get some kind of indication that they might be, either in the last book or towards the end of the series. But other than that, we are to assume that they're dead in the books. So to have these parents come in from the get-go in the TV series, I was like, come on, like, I don't know about this. It seems to be adding something that I don't know that we need. I like my book to movie adaptations to be pure, so maybe it's just being a little bit of a snob, but I was a little bit like, I don't know guys, like really? So then when we get to the end of the series, we start to realize that, at least this is how I have interpreted it, maybe I'm completely wrong, but we start to realize in I think it's the Miserable Mill, that these aren't the Baudelaire children's parents. They go home to a different house, different kids, and they're referred to as these people's kids. So unless the Baudelaire parents have 2 completely different sets of kids who live in 2 completely separate places, these cannot be the same people. So it turns out that these people are actually just other members of VFD, and we're supposed to see, I suppose, that this kind of destruction that we've seen with the Baudelaire kids in their home, this fire that's been set, is not just happening to them, it's happening to other members of this organization. And I actually thought that that was a great way to do that. We think it's the Baudelaire kids' parents, but it's not. It's these other members of the society. And so it does open up this realm of what is VFD. I don't think they've ever referred to it as that yet. They might have, but I don't think so. But it shows that there's more going on than just what we see with Count Olaf. There's some bigger scheme going on. And so I did think that that was a really interesting way to kind of start introducing that to us, because it becomes such a much bigger deal in the next books. So I guess in the next probably season, they'll probably start bringing it up more and more. So I did think it was a great way to sort of start introducing that. I know there's other little things that were thrown in there with the book in Justice Strauss's library about secret societies, and I think Josephine in the Wide Window also has the same book in her vault, I believe. So we are getting a couple little hints, and then of course we see the symbol for VFD all over the place, and the eye and things like that. So, you know, with that, VFD is sort of introduced to us much earlier on in the TV show than it was in the books. And I'm sure that the producers have reasons for that. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It was much more of sort of a mystery in the books, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm not gonna pass too much judgment on that until I see a little bit more about it. So I have to say, I really like the hook-handed man. I think he's probably my favorite henchman of Count Olaf's. I think that he's played really well. He's just kind of like funny, and he's evil, but also just sort of like a goof at the same time. And a lot of times that doesn't work, but for whatever reason, I think it's working in this TV show. So overall, with all of that being said, I am cautiously optimistic about the rest of the series. I do think that Netflix is doing a good job. Like I said, there's some disappointments, but for the most part, I do understand where they're coming from with the changes and things that they've made. So yeah, I'm excited to see where they take it. I'm excited to see what happens in the next batch of books that they decide to adapt. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope I get to review them with you soon. I hope you enjoyed listening to my thoughts about the first 4 books in the first season of the TV series. Let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts about the TV series. Did you like it? Did you not? Is there something that I did or didn't cover that you want to talk about? Let me know. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Before we go, the word of the video for this week is anodyne. The word anodyne means serving to alleviate pain or not likely to offend or arouse tensions. Thanks for watching. Bye. Oh, this is my cat, Pat. Can you hear her? She's talking to me. I'm sitting on her chair, so I guess I'm the one who interrupted her. Want to say hi? This is Pat the cat. Pat, can you say hi? Her name is Penny, but we call her Pat. Actually, her name is Persephone, but you know. So she's come to join me. Now she's running away because she didn't like that.